Good morning. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne at, what is it, 8:43.
Actually, we were talking about old-fashioned foods. Let me just read this one out. The fact that Spam is going out of date and everything nowadays. Derek in Derbyshire says, I have a cupboard full of Spam and I use it for fishing. And then... That's right. Phil says, in the 60s, my mother had a special cupboard with tins of Spam, powdered milk, tins of beans, etc. This was her war cupboard. Wow. Both my parents served in the RAF in World War II, and they were prepared for the next. Dried food.
My dad did that with... he did it for, the 2000 Millennium Bug and all that sort of thing.
Oh, really?
He had a box full of food in the garage. Never needed it, obviously.
No, like I have a cupboard full of candles under the sink.
Oh, yeah.
For the same reason.
Yeah. Anyway, let's find out what's making the headlines for you today with former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, and writer and columnist Emma Wolfe. Good morning, you two.
And I'm really sorry I can't talk to you about Spam.
Oh, that's all right.
I'm talking to you about whether Zelensky is going to lose without US support. A minor matter by comparison with Spam.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
So he's convinced... Is he using this as rhetoric to keep them on board? Or
no,
I think it's a real thing?
I think they need American support and American supplies. Don't forget they've had over $100 billion worth of American kit. But, you know, I worry about...
Sorry, $100 billion?
Oh, yes.
Ooh. Why has Poland pulled out of supplying?
Well, that's an argument over food arrangements. Grain. And but look, it's the Americans that are troubling. I mean, don't forget Biden couldn't wait to become president in order then to chuck everything away in Afghanistan. And now we have a situation where the Republicans are trying, or a small group of Republicans, to cut the money that goes to Zelensky. And you sometimes wonder what these guys are on and why they're in. I mean, the trouble with America, I don't travel around American politics very much to know, it's so provincial. They think the next state is a foreign country.
Yes.
But, you know, there's something here, this is the Telegraph, page 11, and Tim Burchett, never heard of him, not even a household name in his own lavatory, but he sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, said, I appreciate Mr. Zelensky's bravado and everything, but we don't have any money. We're broke and we're giving our money away. I mean, with someone like that,
we have an awful lot more than Ukraine does.
Exactly, and you think to yourself, at the end of the day, what has been amazing is how a man who was a comedian.
Well, he was, yeah.
I mean, a professional comedian, as against the number of amateur comedians that there are in politics. Zelensky has risen to the occasion. He has been formidable. And for him then to be let down and to give Putin the chance to stand up and be back at the top. I mean, this is so crazy that even a member of the United States Congress, one of the extreme right-wing members, should understand that. And so for all that Biden was at it again, repeating the same story twice in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
But at least this time, his heart appears to be in the right place. If the Russians are allowed to come back and win this battle that they stupidly took on with Ukraine, it would be an outrage.
It would be sinful, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Emma, take us to the Sun. And yet another time that it looks as though authorities are going to consider John Venables, who was, of course, one of the murderers of little James Bulger.
Yeah, I think this is absolutely disgusting. Just to recap for all of us on the James Bulger story, which we probably remember, Venables and Thompson were jailed in 1993 for the murder of 2-year-old James Bulger. They were 10 years old and they were freed at 18. John Venables is now up for parole and there's a call to make that parole hearing public. Venables is now 40. He has a new identity.
Wow.
But since that time, he's been jailed twice for possessing images of child sexual abuse. And he's now up for parole once again. He was denied parole in 2020. But I just think we need to really take a look at why on earth he's even up for parole again.
Well, the argument would be that we have a justice system and not a revenge system. If he's... I mean, Mistakes are made, but if he's not
Mistakes
suitable...
are made,
but if
they were
he's
10 years old.
But if... No, I didn't mean that mistake. I mean the mistake in releasing people on parole. But if they decide he's not suitable for parole, he's likely to reoffend, they won't release him.
Anyway, I'm, as you know...
Do you think it should be public?
A famous has-been. And one of the things I was a has-been over was doing life-sentence prisoners and whether they should be released. And then the European Court of Human Rights said that decision couldn't be made by ministers, had to be made by an independent tribunal. Hence, along comes the parole board. My worry with the whole parole system is not that some people should be released, because, of course, they should be. The worry is the kind of people who get mixed up in the parole board. They're not there to keep people locked up. They're there because, for a variety of reasons, they think they should be released. And so the system is now biased in favour of releasing people. And, of course, you do get what the Home Office perhaps shouldn't have called it. In my day, they used to call own goals, which is when someone is released and then does something terrible again.
I mean, I totally get the anger and the frustration around it, and particularly for the poor family, involved in it. It must be horrific. I'm still always drawn to the fact, how do you deal with a criminally offending child?
No, and I agree with you, Stephen. That's exactly what I thought. And I looked again, and they were 10 years old. And I feel that 10-year-olds committing crimes need to be looked at again. It's the fact that John Venables has gone on twice. He's been jailed twice since then. He's now 40 years old. That's not a 10-year-old doing a terrible act, unforgivable act. I was a child when this case happened. I now have a 3-year-old. I feel very differently. The family lost a 2-year-old boy.
Is his reoffending, what he's done, which is sexual reoffending, is that linked to the fact that he's been in prison since he was 10 years old?
Of course, yeah, and that's very likely too. And we have a problem with our prison system in that it teaches people, basically, you know, terrible behaviour and wrong behaviour and all of that. But I'm just saying, he's shown, if someone is working and showing remorse and really trying to rehabilitate their lives, fine. I don't know what Robert Thompson has gone on to do. But
well, we haven't heard.
So
I think we presume that he has not reoffended.
But they've been given new identities. Even if John Venables, when he appears, he'll have his face blurred.
Yeah.
He'll have his voice disguised.
But it's
everything is done to protect him. What about Jamie Bolger?
But the thing about it is that all of this business about how they're given new identities, you just go online and you're told all about them.
Where they live.
Yes.
But I think there's no doubt about it. The system works. That life sentence isn't a life sentence. And a lot of offenders are released and you never hear of them again. Good news.
But they're on a life licence.
But they're on a life licence, it can be recalled. But the problem is when the system is too enthusiastic to let people go who continue to pose a risk to the community.
To pose a risk.
Isn't it because we as a society want to believe that prison is somehow rehabilitative? That's a word.
It is for some.
And of course it is for some. And we want to believe, I guess, or at least the parole board might want to give him the benefit of the doubt because they want to believe that the prison system works.
And he's proved twice, if not more. You know,
I agree with you. What should it be made public in any way, do you think, this? So that we see
Well, the family would like it to be public, and I actually think their wishes should be respected.
Yes.
A lot of these hearings are now held in public. This one isn't going to be. And you think to yourself, why is everybody bending over backwards to make it easier for these guys? And since there's no way they can keep their identity, well, it's only one of them we're dealing with, and keep his identity secret, I think it would be far better if the public were put in a position to know what was going on. And I don't believe in secret justice.
No, I
possibly.
think secret justice is very dangerous.
I'll tell you how I see this, though. It's your classic lose-lose situation, isn't it? There's no happy outcome to this.
No, there isn't.
No. It's a terrible...
it's awful. And you said within all of this, you've just got to think of the family and what Denise is going through.
Again and again.
I tell you one thing that I used to look at some of these a lot of these cases. I did over 1,000 life sentence prisoner cases while I was in, all of them murderers. And I would look into the background and try and see the own goals that committed a serious offence again. Was there any intimation that this might happen? And usually there was. I remember there was one where a chap committed murder for the second time. He killed his father the first time and had run round his house laughing while stabbing his father to death. And yet he was regarded as though it was just a family murder. And generally they think if it's a family murder, it's much safer to let people out. At the end of the day, I still believe very strongly that if you have doubts, those doubts must sound in favour of the public. There is no reason why someone who was killed once, whatever age they were, should be given the benefit of the doubt. If there's a doubt, keep them locked up.
Or if there's a risk to children, as there clearly is.
And I agree with you, Emma, to a certain extent, that I think Denise, the mother particularly, but there's a father as well, and I think there's brothers and sisters, that they deserve some sort of... I don't know, they deserve a say. And their say should be...
public acknowledgement of their grief and what they've gone through in the last 20 years.
Why shouldn't they have their voice actually be given
30 years.
30 years.
And it was an appalling offence.
It was just the most terrible thing.
But it was cruel and vicious.
Yeah.
And there is plenty of evidence, if you look back through these people, the cases, you can find plenty of evidence that someone who starts young continues down that track.
That's the concern. We've got to leave it there. Emma, David, thank you. It's been great to see you this morning.
Right now, it's 8:54, which is roughly 6 minutes to 9. Here's Aidan with your weather.